Okay, welcome back. Should we wait more for others? Or else you can start doing this question, right? So I uploaded it just now to the LMS. You can download the question from the LMS also, or else I'll open it on my screen as well. Okay, so this is the process of measuring surpluses. How many more is to come, or have they gone after the break? Now, where's the attendance sheet? So you have signed for both. Now, next time you sign for one session and then sign for the other one. Okay, next time. Now, at universities, we check student attendance, but I don't want to check it here because I'm assuming I'm teaching to professionals, right? So I hope that you all don't forge signatures like students that read the names and check the signs, right? You sign for the session which you are attending, right? And is there an attendance rule for examination? 80%. Then there is a chance that we will put forward signatures. But today I want to check, right? But from next week, don't know. We'll check the random should be checked. But I expect professional behavior from you all because I heard you all are working, right? And so I expect you all to be very professional and be ethical and sign for the session you're only present. Okay. Now today you all have signed both sessions, but make sure you sign separately. First session one time and the second session the next time. Okay. Okay. Have they gone or what happened? All of a sudden, have they gone? Or are they coming? Okay, so let's start off. No, otherwise it's shining. The process of measuring surpluses, right? So these are the formulas. Now earlier we learned what is consumed surplus, what is produced surplus. So now we are going to look at the formula which you can use to calculate consumed surplus and produced surplus. So look at this. Consumer surplus. So how do you calculate it? You remember in the demand curve, there was a maximum demand price and equilibrium price. So you have to take the difference between those two. Maximum demand price minus equilibrium price. Then you multiply it by the quantity demanded at the equilibrium. Then divide it by 2. Why are you dividing by 2? Why are you dividing it by 2? Now, consumer surplus, now is this area. So what is this area? It's a triangle. So how do you calculate area of a triangle? You remember this one? This distance in may distance multiply you divide it by 2. That's how you calculate the area of a triangle according to mathematics, right? So that's why for this formula also it's like this. So maximum demand price minus equilibrium price into equilibrium quantity divided by 2. Then producer surplus also similarly. First you have to take the equilibrium price because it's starting from the here, right? Producer surplus is this area. So equilibrium price minus the minimum price they expected into the quantity, equilibrium quantity divided by 2. Okay, so that is how you calculate producer surplus. Okay, so here's an illustration. Now these are your requirements. You're supposed to look at this data in the table and draw the demand and supply curve. First of all, draw two axes, price axis and the quantity axis you have to draw. Price axis and the quantity axis. Then mark these prices here. Mark the quantities also here. And accordingly draw your demand curve and the supply curve by looking at these data. Right? So at price 1, quantity supply is 0. Okay? Then price 2, quantity supply is 5. So likewise, you have to mark the dots and draw the supply curve. Mark the relevant dots, draw the demand curve. Identify the equilibrium. And then you identify the consumer surplus and the producer surplus area and color it. And then also calculate the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Do this value, then you will get some training to draw demand supply curve plus also to do the calculation. This document is uploaded to LMS. You can refer to that as well. Students are joining from the team also attend to this question. Down the screen also it's down in the LMS, so you can refer to that and do this calculation. Draw the demand and supply curve first, and then identify the equilibrium and then calculate the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Sorry. You can download it from the LMS source. If you have a pencil, use a pencil to draw, then it's easier. වැරදුනත් මකන්න පුළුවන්. Done? Are you done? Those who are still doing it, please raise your hand. Those who are still attending the question, please raise your hand. Okay, can I speak? Okay. Okay, so how do you calculate the consumer? Okay, so how do you calculate the consumer surplus? What's the formula? What's the formula? Maximum demand price minus equilibrium price. So what is maximum demand price? 7 minus the equilibrium price is 4. That into equilibrium quantity. How much is the equilibrium quantity? 50. 50 divided by 2. So 7 minus 4 is 3 into 15 divided by 2. The value comes to 45 divided by 2, 22.5. Right? Did everyone get it right? Then produce the surplus. What's the formula? Now you have to remember these formulas in future. Equilibrium price, how much is that? 4. 4 is the equilibrium price. And then minus minimum price. What is that? 1 into equilibrium quantity 15 divided by 2. 4 minus 1, 3 into 15 divided by 2, same thing, no? 45 divided by 2 is 22.5. Right? Did everyone get this correct? So consumer surplus, when you apply the formula, it will be 22.5 and producer surplus also will be 22.5. Okay, good. So everyone has drawn the graphs correctly and have done the calculation, most of you. Hari? Okay. Now we are done with the Did the students who are joining online also got it right? Please raise your hand if you had an issue. The ones who are joining online, did you do the calculation? And did you get the consumed surplus as 22.5 and produce surplus as 20.22.5?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, good. What about others? If there's any issue, you can please raise your hand, okay?
Ma'am, just a small concern.
Yeah.
When you are writing it in the whiteboard, actually we cannot see anything.
Yes.
So what Miss Tilini was saying last week, as she was taking a Word document and she's doing it while giving it in the screen. So if you can do something like that, I think it will be more clear for us also.
Yeah, we'll do like that. Okay. Do you want me to do the calculation now, or did you get 22.5? Did you apply the formula?
Yeah, it's okay. I think for me it's okay. I'm not sure about others.
Okay, okay. Sorry, I forgot. Actually, as the usual practice, I went and wrote it there. But we'll try to do it on the screen. It's not very comfortable, but we'll try to do it. Okay, so now we are done with this area, so we can move on to the next lesson. Okay. Next lesson would be if you have your course outline, you can refer to it. We have covered the like elasticity concept, and now we are moving to the consumer behavior lesson, right? So this is a separate area in economics, but definitely interconnected or related to the elasticities, demand and everything. But this is quite a broad area. Another concept now in your syllabus, actually you have a very vast syllabus. Both microeconomics and macroeconomics, both has to be covered in your principles of economics syllabus. So it's a very vast syllabus that we have to usually know. If you take our universities, even in Colombo as well as in Jayawardenepura, microeconomics is a separate subject. Macroeconomics is a separate subject. So microeconomics is in one semester, macro is in another semester. So it has lot of quantity of theories and knowledge it should be covered. But here now we have to concise everything just for these 15 sessions and do everything. So because of that, we are doing only a glimpse of things in the sense like the most essential, the necessary things you should know as principles of economics. That's what we are covering. So we are just touching upon the concepts and moving. So in detail, we are not doing. We don't have time to do, right? Because we only have 30 hours of 30 or some hours of teaching for one subject. Neither 30 hours, neither. So there's another component, student hours, right? That those are the hours you should study, right? So please use those hours to read on these concepts and gain a deeper understanding. Now, especially you have to refer to the reference book, right? It's mentioned, I think, even on the course outline. There in detail, they have explained everything with examples, theories, case studies, everything is there. So you're supposed to read them and get that understanding because we cannot cover everything during the class, right? So the basic concepts, the theories that I will touch upon, but in detail knowledge, you have to gain by reading at least your reference book. Everyone should definitely read the reference book. You can read any additional material also that is good, but read your reference book definitely. Okay. We will try to cover as much as possible. So this consumer behavior lesson is also quite a long lesson. So I'm doing part of it today, and the balance part I will do next week, right? So these slides, I think we have about 14, 15 slides. So I will do these things today. Now I didn't upload this to LMS because there's another part for it. So I will include that also and upload the whole slide set together in your LMS so that you won't get confused because it's one lesson. So today I have only the ones which I'm doing today, right? Balance part I will add it on to it and upload to LMS, okay? Okay. So individual consumer behavior and utility maximization, right? So we are going to talk about consumers. Now you and I, we all are consumers, right? So I'm sure you will be able to understand these concepts easily, right? Now these are the learning outcomes of this session. Can you quickly read them through before we start? So these are what you will learn by the end of this lesson. So today I will cover the first two learning outcomes. Next week, the second two learning outcomes and another lesson I will do, right? So first of all, let's learn what is this theory of consumer behavior. It's a very broad subject, as I earlier said. The consumer behavior is a very broad subject in economics, right? So we are just touching upon the important elements here. So what is this theory of consumer behavior? The theory of consumer behavior examines consumer preferences and what influence their economic behavior. So in an economy, there are multiple parties or multiple stakeholders are there. So who are the stakeholders in an economy? In an economy, there are different stakeholders. Who are they? Sorry?
Owners,
Owners of a
company,
company. Okay. In an economy, government. Sorry? Public. Actually, in an economy, we look at few stakeholders. In terms of economics, we say that in an economy, there are individuals. Individuals like you and I. Then there are firms. Firms are business units, organizations. Then there's a government, right? So there are three parties, individuals, firms, and the government, right? So here, the theory of consumer behavior is related to individuals, like you and I, okay? So we all are individuals, or rather we all are consumers. We buy products, we use them, we consume, right? And we gain satisfaction, we pay a price for it. We all are individual consumers, right? And we engage in different economic activities. What are the economic activities we engage in? As a consumer, what is the activity we engage in? Purchasing. We buy products, we consume them. We pay a price for it. Those are economic activities, right? So, the assumptions of theory of consumer behavior are individual preferences determine the amount of pleasure people derive from the goods and services they consume, right? Consumers face constraints or limitations on their choices. Consumers maximize their pleasure from consumption subject to constraints they face. constraints. Okay. So, the individual preference determines the amount of pleasure people derive from goods and services they consume. So we all buy goods and services and we all try to consume them. And what do we ultimately try to do? We want to obtain a pleasure, right? So by eating, by getting like buying clothes or anything else we buy, we consume, we try to derive pleasure, right? So our preferences determine the amount of pleasure we derive from goods and services, right? So there are certain preferences for us. Now, for example, let's think about dinner today. So what do you like to have for dinner tonight? It depends from our preference. What do we like to have? Do we like to go home and have rice or bread, or do we want to pick up something on the way like pizza or puttu or whatever? It depends on our preference, right? Do we all have a preference in any consumption decision? Okay? And that preference, now why we prefer something over the other, will depend on the pleasure we can generate out of consuming that good or service. Right? Why would you know, for example, what do you like to have for dinner tonight? Bread. So why do you pick bread over all the other types of food? What's the reason? The easiest dinner option, bread, right? So that is the pleasure. That's the reason why you prefer bread over everything else. So there's a reason, right? So as what we prefer, our preference is determined by, now her preference is determined by the convenience. Easy, right? So likewise, there are different constraints or limitations why we choose something, right? Now, bread must not be the most pleasurable food you can eat. No, it has a certain taste. It's not the most pleasant food you have ever eaten, right? But you pick bread due to probably convenience and the cost effectiveness. And there are other reasons you can eat it with anything. So there are certain constraints or limitations which determine your choice. When you have multiple options of food available, why you choose bread is affected by those constraints and limitations. So your constraints are now you have been having lectures from morning to evening, tired, can't cook. So bread is easier, you can pick it on the way. So those are your constraints, limitations, and it's relatively less costly. So those are your constraints or limitations why you choose something, right? So whenever we make a consumption decision like that, when we make a choice, there is a preference for us, but there are certain constraints or limitations which kind of like bind us to make certain decisions, right? So consumers try to maximize their pleasure from consumption subject to constraints they face. So you all have constraints or limitations when you go to make a decision. But always you try to maximize your pleasure with the limited resources you have, right? So now, with regards to, let's say, food, so you try to identify what's a budget, what's a cost I can spend for a meal, how much can I spend relatively. So that's a budget constraint. And out of that amount, what is the maximum benefit I can generate? So you compare those two and you try to maximize your pleasure. So that's how we all individuals behave, right? And with that discussion, this concept of utility comes into play, right? Goods are desired because of their ability to satisfy human wants, right? Why we purchase goods and consume? Because it satisfies our needs and wants, right? The property of a good that enables it to satisfy human wants is called utility. Utility means the satisfaction generated by consuming a good or a service, right? In other words, utility refers to the satisfaction or happiness or level of comfort we enjoy from the goods and services we consume. So utility is a simple concept which is used to measure satisfaction. Can you measure satisfaction? Usually, how satisfied are you? Because satisfaction will depend from one person to another. Now, for example, let's think about the lecture today. Are you satisfied with the lecture today? How would you know now from one person to the other, your satisfaction will differ based on your expectations, based on different other conditions, right? So it's not easy to say who is more satisfied, who is least satisfied, because it's a very subjective decision, your satisfaction, right? So because it's not easy to identify, there is this concept called utility, which is used to measure satisfaction. Okay, so utility is a concept or a measurement which is used to measure the satisfaction or happiness people derive from consuming a good or a service, right? Yeah, so that is about consumer satisfaction. So when it comes to utility, there are two approaches which can be used to discuss about theory of consumer behavior. One is cardinal utility approach, the other one is ordinal utility approach. So we'll talk about these things. First one is cardinal utility approach. Cardinal utility theory assumes that personal utility can be measured in exact units of measurement called utils, right? So cardinal utility theory assumes that a particular person's utility, that is their satisfaction, could be measured using a measurement called util. Okay. Total utility is the total amount of satisfaction that the consumer obtained from consumption of a commodity per time period, right? So you can calculate something called total utility. That means what is the total satisfaction you generate by consuming a particular product for a particular time period. So you measure it, you call it total utility. Okay. And also you calculate something called marginal utility. Marginal utility means the additional satisfaction you derive from an additional unit of commodity consumed, right? Now, for example, let's say you are having a pizza, right? So you have the first piece of pizza slice, you gain a utility. Then second piece of pizza, there is an additional utility you generate from consuming the second piece. Then when you consume the third piece of pizza piece, you get another additional amount of utility, right? So every extra 1 unit you consume, you gain an additional utility. That is called marginal utility. For every extra unit of consumption, what is the extra amount of utility or satisfaction you generate is called marginal utility. So that is what is calculated using this formula. Marginal utility of X equals change in total utility of the X product divided by change in the X units you consume. So this is the formula. Marginal utility of X is equal to delta TU, total utility, divided by changing delta x, right? So remember this formula that is used to calculate marginal utility. Is that clear? Any questions so far? Those who are at the back, is it clear? So now let's look at total and marginal utility schedule. So look at this schedule. Here on this column, you have number of burgers per time period. We're talking about burgers, consuming burgers. And this column has the total utility you generate by consuming that burgers. So when you are having 0 burgers, utility is 0. When you have 1 burger, you generate a satisfaction or utility of 20. When you have 2 burgers, total utility you generate is 30. Total utility, yeah? When you consume 3 burgers, total utility you generate is 37. When a person is consuming burgers, that they have measured their satisfaction in terms of utils. That is what is mentioned here. Right? So marginal utility means additional utility, no? So when you here in the first instance, when you are consuming 1 additional unit, what is the additional utility they have generated here? 20. Okay. Now when they are consuming the second burger, what's the additional utility they have generated here? 10. When they are consuming the third burger, what is the additional utility here? 7. When they are consuming the fourth burger, what's the additional utility here? 3. When consuming the fifth burger, what is the additional utility here? 2. When consuming the sixth burger, what's the additional utility here? 0. When consuming the seventh burger, what's the additional utility? -3. Can you see? Marginal utility start at a very high level, but every extra unit you consume at a stretch, your additional utility, total utility increased, but additional utility for each additional burger has reduced over. Right? Can you see that? That's a real scenario. I assume that you go to McDonald's and have a burger, you get a full satisfaction, right? Same burger you have again, you get some satisfaction, but not as having the first one. I mate burger kama khaddi. Again, you get extra satisfaction, but not that much. Imagine you have 7 burgers at a stretch. You will feel like puking, right? Because it has gone above your satisfaction. Too much of one product. Okay. That's the reason why you have the same product, too many quantities, your marginal utility reduces. You get sick of that product when you have it for a very long time. Okay. So that is why marginal utility is declining. So now let's put these figures to curves. Okay, now every time economics has to deal with tables, numbers, calculation, curves. That's the way how in economics work. Okay, now here we put the total utility figures into a curve. So total utility in one axis, on the x-axis you have total utility. In the y-axis, you have number of burgers per time period, right? So you mark them. Number of burgers and the total utility you mark on this curve. And then you draw the total utility curve. So can you see the total utility curve? It has increased at an increasing phase initially, then increased at a decreasing phase. Then it has become constant here, and the total utility has started declining after a certain time. Can you see that? It has declined here. So usually total utility curve will be like this. Okay? That is total utility curve. Now let's draw the marginal utility curve. Marginal utility is in the x-axis, number of burgers in the y-axis. So marginal utility usually shows a decreasing trend. So you map the number of burgers and the marginal utility. Okay. Then can you see now this number of burgers, marginal utility is in the middle now. So from 0 to 1 when you are moving marginal utility. So you can see it is marked here in the middle point, midpoint. Between 1 and 2, the midpoint marginal utility is marked. Between 2 and 3, midpoint. The reason for that is that this is falling in mid, right? So that's why it's marked like that. So you mark the points and you draw the curve. You should know to draw these curves as well, right? So you can see marginal utility curve is a downward sloping or decreasing curve. Why? Because we saw even on the table, for each additional unit you consume, your marginal utility is declining. So that is why it's declined. And after a certain point, it's going even beyond 0 to minus sign. Okay, so that is your marginal utility curve. Maximum total utility. Now we are going to put them together and see whether it has a relationship. So this is your total utility curve and this is your marginal utility curve. So you try to put them together and see whether it has a relationship. So can you see at the maximum point of your total utility, your marginal utility is 0. Why? Can somebody say why it is like that? At the maximum point of total utility curve, your marginal utility is 0. Why? Sorry?
The maximum satisfaction that you attain.
Yeah, you have achieved the maximum satisfaction. And can you see at the maximum point of the total utility curve, your total utility is constant. It's constant. So there's nothing additional happening. No additional utility generated. Your total utility is constant at that point. Here, now at this point, between unit 5 and 6, your total utility is constant now. So there's nothing additional to that. So that's the reason at that point your marginal utility is 0. When there is constant, it's 0. Right? That's why at the total or the maximum level of total utility or marginal utility is 0. And when your total utility is declining, your marginal utility is becoming negative. Okay, total utility declining, marginal utility become negative. You have to remember these points. Can you write them down? When total utility is increasing, your marginal utility is decreasing. At the maximum point of the total utility, marginal utility is 0. When the total utility is declining, marginal utility is negative. Now, these things could come to your MCQ questions. පටලවල දාන්න පුළුවන්. Without, now graphs are not given, so by reading those things, you should be able to track it. Okay. Is that clear? So when total utility is increasing, marginal utility is decreasing. When total utility is at its maximum point, marginal utility is 0. When total utility is decreasing, marginal utility is negative, right? Okay. So now let's go on to discuss about law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay. So earlier we saw that marginal utility is decreasing. And that is what is meant by law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay. This law states that as a person consumes more and more of a given commodity per time period, when the consumption of other commodities being held constant, marginal utility will eventually tend to decline. So what does this law say? What does this say? When you consume more and more of a particular commodity at a particular period of time, marginal utility will eventually tend to decline. That is what is meant by law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay. The negative sloped portion of MU curve reflects law of diminishing marginal utility. So in the marginal utility curve, you saw there's a negative slope. So that demonstrates the diminishing marginal utility law. Clear? So this is the curve. So it is negative sloped, or it's a decreasing trend, just like the demand curve. So what does this demonstrate? That marginal utility is diminishing, right? Now there are certain assumptions in the law of diminishing marginal utility. Now these are the assumptions. Can you all quickly read it? So most of the laws which are there in theory, there are assumptions, right? Because economics, it's very difficult to explain economics in real world scenarios. So you have to have certain laws or rather assumptions, right? In the sense we think certain things are constant when we are trying to establish a theory and show the relationship, because we know the world we are working in is very dynamic. At one given point of time, so many variables changes, and it has an effect on the theory which you are discussing. So you assume certain things are constant. So even when you are explaining the law of diminishing marginal utility, you keep certain assumptions, right? So the first assumption is unit of the consumer good must be standard. So to explain the law of diminishing utility, the unit which you are consuming should be standard. Okay. For example, now let's take this pizza example. You are going to purchase and eat a pizza, right? So for you to experience diminishing marginal utility, decreasing utility, you have to eat one variety of pizza, right? Let's assume chicken pizza, so you only eat that pizza. If you eat other varieties of pizza, now you have a piece of chicken pizza, then you have a piece of vegetarian pizza, there is no diminishing utility. You get a separate taste, so your utility enhances. එකම දේ දිගට කනකොට තමයි your utility declines. But if you consume variety of things, your utility won't decline, right? So unit of the consumed goods you're consuming should be standard. And also we also assume that during that time period of consumption, consumers' taste and preference also remain unchanged. That's another assumption. During that period of consumption, consumers' taste and preference did not change, right? And continuity should be there in consumption. So you have to consume one good at a continuous pace. In a sense, if you consume pizza today, and if you consume the second piece next week, and then the other piece the other week, it won't happen like that. Then you will be fully satisfied each piece you eat. But only when you eat the entire pizza at the same time at a stretch, without any break in between, you experience this diminishing marginal utility, right? So there should be a continuity in the consumption. You can have a break when it's necessary, but that break should be very short, right? Then we also assume the mental condition of the consumer who's consuming it remain normal during the consumption period. Your mental condition, you don't go mad or insane or anything, you remain normal during that consumption time period. Is that mental, not only mental, even the physical condition, right? Remains normal during that time period. So these are the assumptions of the law of diminishing marginal utility to remain as it is. So the good example which we can use for this is this Pizza Hut promotion. Have you seen this? Have you went for any of these like all you can eat? Now this is a long time back, but there are these promotions which come from time to time, all what you can eat, Kiela. Have you heard of it or gone for it? So they give a time period and they ask you to come. You can eat any amount you want during a particular time period. You can come with a friend or something like that. So look at the rules. So they say this offer is on this day at this time period. The promotion will be there in this Pizza Hut restaurant island wide, right? And you and back then, this is 2011, so you were charged only 499 rupees per person per day to participate in this. And you should come with another person, right? Your team should consist 2 people. So you have to have 2 people to share this, right? Share the pizza. So you're given half an hour per payment on that day to participate. So you pay 499 rupees, you get half an hour. Then you have to pick whether you need a veggie pizza or chicken pizza. You have to pick one variety, right? So they give you half an hour and test who can eat the most amount of pizzas. That's what you say, all you can eat. It's a competition sort of a thing. So they serve you one pizza, right? So you have to finish every single piece of pizza before you raise your flag to ask for the next pizza. You will be served immediately by a staff member standing nearest to you. So you both of you can get together, eat pizza, eat the whole pizza, and when you are done, you can ask for another. They will replace another. You have to eat that also. Then they will check within that half an hour how many pizzas can you eat. So the one who can eat the most number of pizzas are given a gift or something like that, right? And they will provide free Coca-Cola to drink. So that should be for the break, right? So what do you think we'll have? So what you should do is be ready to be served immediately after you grab your seat, eat as fast as you can because you get as many pizza slices as you can handle in that half an hour. Be focused, concentrate on your pizza while you eat, wave your flag for the next pizza as soon as you finish what you're eating. So what do you think you will experience in this scenario? What are your feelings? What do you think? Oh, this is a competition which was done by Pizza Hut in Sri Lanka some time ago. Now, this was taken in 2011, but it happened many times even after that until recently. What do you think? Not only Pizza Hut, now some burger places also do this. No? What do you think will happen? Hmm? Yeah, so Pizza Hut have really understood economics. They know this diminishing marginal utility. They know that you cannot eat that much during half an hour, right? Once you have 8 pieces of pizza, anyway you will feel so full and your utility has drastically gone down and you won't want another pizza. Sometimes you might go for the second one also, but you definitely will not go for the third one. You can't, right? Because you get fed up of it. Your utility decline. Every extra piece you eat, your utility declines. Same variety, no, not a different variety, same chicken or whatever, same taste, right? So you get fed up and you finally feel like you want to vomit. So you don't want to take anything more. They know that, right? Knowing that, they arrange those competitions because they know it will boost people. It's a good marketing tool, promotional tool, but they know they won't lose much. Also, that there's a limit that you can eat, a maximum limit you can eat because of this diminishing marginal utility theory. Okay, so that is why these assumptions are there. With those assumptions, this work. Okay, so not only with regards to food, even with regards to any other consumption, it is the same. You will always experience diminishing marginal utility when you try to consume same product at the same time over and over again. Okay, so that is the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, so that's all what I plan to do for today. The other parts of this lesson, so we talked about, we learned what is cardinal utility and we described law of diminishing marginal utility and the basic assumptions of that law with an example. So the identification of equilibrium for single and two products, this equimarginal theory, and constructing the individual demand curve from marginal utility theory, we will do next week, right? So you will learn now here that marginal utility theory also is a downward sloping curve. You will learn how that helps to construct the individual demand curve. I said demand curve is also a negative sloping curve. No? So those two can be interrelated and we can see how from the diminishing, like in the marginal utility theory curve, how that can be used to construct the individual demand curve, right? So we will discuss those next week. The else part of this lesson we will do next week. And then we will touch upon the indifference curve lesson next week, right? And the other, okay. The other thing what I want to mention is, so this is your course outline. Okay. So we are in the fourth lesson, individual consumer behavior and utility maximization. So part of it we will do next week. Indifference curve also we will do next week. And after that, we are actually finishing the essential elements of microeconomics. The essential elements of microeconomics which we're supposed to do for you all is from this lesson 5.1 to lesson 5. From lesson 6 onwards, we will start macroeconomics, right? So these all are related to macroeconomic aspect. You know the difference between micro and macro, right? Yeah. So now today is the 4th, right? 11th we will do, yeah. Then by 11th we are finishing microeconomics part, right? Then after that we are starting the macroeconomics from 18th onwards. So by that, now you have certain assignment components, right? You have many assignments, right? You will have a midterm quiz. So probably that will be MCQ questions, right? Where you have to answer certain number of MCQ questions where you have to pick the answer. So it can have theoretical aspects. It also could have calculations. So you have to pick it. So for that, it will be 20%. And there will be individual report. Group report and group presentation we will take towards the end of the semester, right? Midterm quiz could fall in the middle, in between. I will inform that in advance. The individual report, so for the individual report, I will give you the assignment. And I think Miss has told you all to submit it by 18th or something, right? Did she tell you any date like that? 18th. Okay, I'll check with her. So I will hopefully upload the individual report assignment, what you're supposed to do by 7th, mid of this week. I will upload it to your LMS, what you're supposed to do in it as the individual report. So that will be a very small assignment. I think the percentage of it will be 10% sure. So that will be a small assignment out of the lessons what we have covered so far, right? So probably from this microeconomics part, I haven't decided yet, so I might give a small case study and you all to write on it, or like a calculation or something like that, where you have to work individually. So I'll give you 2 weeks time for you to work on it and upload, right? So if I give you that on, let's say, if I upload it by 7, I will give you 2 weeks from that. Probably your submission date would be 21st. I'll give you 2 weeks for you to work on your individual assignment and upload it to LMS, right? So during this week, I will upload it to LMS. So next week, I'm coming for the class on the Sunday. So if you have any questions, if you have anything to clarify, if you don't understand anything, you can clarify it on the Sunday, next following Sunday, right? So somebody told me that she told you all that I will explain to you about the individual assignments. So I will draft it and I will upload it, right? So you can expect it by mid of this week. And after that, midterm quiz could come after about, let's say, wait, I have a schedule, just let me check. I have the date plan with me. Your midterm quiz will fall on the 6th week. 6th week. 6th week means yeah. 6th week means 14th of January as per this schedule. If there's any change, I'll let you all know, but make sure you keep your date tentative to 14th of January, right? So don't schedule any other work during that time. Please convey this message to other students who are not here today also. 14th of January, on a tentative basis, we will have our midterm quiz, and that will be for 1 hour, right? I think 14th of January is it's a Saturday. Your lecture time changed, no, after some time. Now it's on Sunday, but after a certain time, it shifts to Saturday. Saturday, I think the timetable which was sent to us was from 3:30 to 5:30. 14th January, 3:30 to 5:30. That's the time for principles of economics, right? That's 2 hours, yeah. So from that 1 hour we will take for the midterm quiz. And the next hour I will do part of the lesson. Okay. So keep that time, 14 January, 3:35, that time for your midterm quiz. So start studying from now onwards because it's a MCQ test. So you have to study and come. So whatever we have learned so far, you study. Refer the reference book, right? And the most referred reference book out here, there are a few available. And out of these, we are mainly referring to this one. First one, Carl E.C. Ray C.F. Sharon, that book. That's a book we are referring mostly. And the first එක. So you can, that is the main reference book. Other things also you can read, it's good. But this is the main reference book, first one. Okay, so you have to read it. For whatever the lesson we have covered so far, you have to read that book and also study your tunes and be ready for the midterm test. Danidam last not much of a time, so prepare. So we will have the MCQ test. That is for 20%. Yeah, so we only have 15 classes, 30 contact hours. So you have to have direct study 20 hours, self-directed learning 30 hours. So you have to do most of the studies. Okay. Yeah. So please mark that as that. And the individual assignment or 18th week එකේ දවසක් I will give up for the submission this week. This 18th, the week which is started from 18th, that week one day I will give as the deadline for the submission for your individual assignment. I will inform that I will upload it to LMS during this week. So check the LMS. Okay. Are there any other questions? Do you have any questions relating to the assignment or anything else? Is there any question? The students who are joining from the teams, do you have any questions about today's lesson or like about the assignments or anything? Okay, so can I know some feedback about today's lesson? Was it okay? Was the way it was conducted? Are there any adjustments you should need? Now this is the first session. I want to know how should I change to suit your requirements so that I satisfy your utility. So can you tell me, like, are you okay? Am I fast or am I too slow? Or are these things which you already know, you don't need this much of details, or you want me to skip and go faster? Or like you think the pace is good, or anything, so that we can adjust from next week onwards? You can be open, I don't get offended. What do you think?
Can you give some notes?
Notes to write? No, no. That is only during school days, you are given notes. That is called spoon feeding. So when you become mature, when you are after school, I think ideally in school also it shouldn't be done. You have to write down your own notes. Even in universities, we don't give notes, only the slides. You have to write down it, because writing your own notes involves your brain and your hand, and that itself is a learning. So you learn from few sensors. You learn from eyes, then you learn from ears, you learn from engaging by writing, and you also learn from activities. So we haven't done any group activities. So if you are given assignment or some sort of activity, by discussing with your peers, friends, you learn. So those are the 4 learning sensors, right? We call it VARK model: visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means working on. Okay? So when you write, so you have to stimulate all sensors of learning for it to happen, right? So when I read notes, you will never learn. When you write down your own note, you think. You try to match the words, match the sentence, and write it in your own idea. So you engage in some learning. Okay? So it's very important for mature students, especially, to engage in your learning. Okay? So we are just facilitators. You are facilitating your learning process. You are supposed to, it's called student-centered learning. Students are supposed to learn. You are the center. We are just around you. We are just facilitating only. Education should be student-centered, not teacher-centered. In teacher-centered learning, teacher tells everything. Teacher dictates note, teacher tells everything. You can worship the teacher, and teacher will get the hug and the pulang to write the exam and whatever. But here now we have to promote student-centered learning, right? So you have to take down your notes. If you have any question or concern, if you don't understand, you can always ask me. But you write your notes. I encourage that. Right? I won't dictate notes. That was back in A level. Anything else? Anything else? Now, from the lesson I conduct, you can write down your note from whatever the examples I say. But I said there's so much deep content to these concepts, and those things you have to read and find. Read your reference book to start off with, right? That is what you should do during your student hours. Student learning hours, you have to read on those concepts and obtain a deep understanding. Even in foreign universities, lecturers just go through the surface and they give lots of reference material. And you're supposed to go home, read, and write your own note through reading. And whatever the lecturer said, you can combine both of them and prepare your own note. That's how mostly, definitely away from Sri Lanka, that's how it happens. Only in Sri Lanka and India and these parts of the world, the student-centered teaching is there. Okay. So you read and obtain the knowledge and write your note. Okay. Read the reference book. It is very explanated, good, nicely user-friendly. You can read. Anything else? Did you understand? Is the pace okay? Too fast? Too slow? Anything? Tell me openly, no problem. Okay. The ones who are at the back? Okay. බොරුවට ඔළුව වඩනවා දන්නේ. Now next time I will take yours forward, okay? So if you have any concern, you can come and talk to me and go. Individually, if you want to tell anything which you can't tell in the public. Other than that, that's it. So I'll see you next week. Okay? So the students are joining shops online more. Do you have any concerns, any issues, anything you want to raise? So sorry, I understand your question. Sometimes I miss writing because we are so used to write on the whiteboard and explain things. So I forget it and I write it. And I forget that I have to all those things. So next time onwards, I'll try to change it. I'll try to type it on the computer and try to understand it. Sorry about that. Other than that, do you have any concern? Do you understand today's lesson useful? Or do you want any change in the way I conduct it? Please let me know.
Madam,
Sorry?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, tell me.
In this microeconomy that we are doing now for the first 5 classes,
Sorry.
for the microeconomy that we are doing for the first 5 classes,
Yes.
are there any changes in the theory for the last 25 years?
Theory in the sense.
In this demand, supply, utility, utility consume, and all those theory that we are learning now.
Yeah.
Were there any difference between last 25 years?
Economic theories remain the same. It
Remain the
doesn't.
same. But
Yes.
of course, the macro is changed. That depends on the government policy and those things that can change.
Yes.
But micro is remain same. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Theories.
Thank you.
Theories
That's what I
don't
want.
change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Theory remain the same, but
Yes.
research on these areas,
Yeah.
researchers have changed. Their application over time has changed. So recent research publication, academic findings will be different, but the theoretical grounding of the economics will always remain
Remain the
constant
same.
since
Okay, thank you.
Adam
That's what I
Smith's
think.
time.
Okay.
Yes. So these
Thank
are things which we have done for a very long time. Yes. Any other question you have?
No, not from me. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Did you understand today's lesson? Was it okay, or any changes I should do in my delivery?
No, yeah, okay, yeah. Because
Okay.
as you know, I am one of those practitioners that you are referring to. We do work all the
Okay.
time. And I
Yes.
did this course from one Professor Ratnakara. I don't know, you know him probably. He was a
Sorry,
vice
what is
chancellor
that?
at University of Kelaniya those days.
Okay,
Did
okay,
with him. He was my economic professor at the time. So he
okay.
did the same thing.
Same thing, yes. Economics theory don't change.
Change, yeah.
It's not
That's what
like
I-
other subjects. Now marketing and those things changes
Oh,
over
they may
time.
change, but not this one.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
economics doesn't change. It's like, it's a science, it's a social science, like normal natural science, it remained quite constant.
Because I don't know whether you know, I am attending from Canada.
Ah, okay,
Okay.
understood.
So that I have a time difference of 10.5 hours with Colombo.
Ah, really? It must be
Okay.
difficult for you, no? What's the time there now?
So when you start the class, it was maybe 2:30 in the morning, midnight, after midnight.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It must be very difficult for you. Thank you for joining the lesson.
I am
This
taking
time.
up with the institute. I told them they should give us exemption for this because we did this. You know, at those days there were only 2 universities in
Yes,
Sri Lanka, but now you have over 25. So, but these
yeah,
courses we did at the Institute of Chartered Accountants by the lecturers who are teaching in universities.
yes.
See, as I said, Professor Ratnakara, he was the vice chancellor of the Kelaniya University at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about in mid 70s.
Okay.
It was in mid-70s or late 70s. Yeah.
Okay. Nice to know. Others, do you have any questions? If not, we can wind up for the day. Thank you very much for joining. I'll try to incorporate the writing and everything also to the computer so that it's easy for you guys also next week. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.